joined the military, spent 8 years in the military, and I can never forget one particular time we were doing training in Utah near Salt Lake City, and a couple of buddies of ours, we had some passes, so went to the city, went to the mall, and as we were coming back, we stopped at a convenience store, and I walked in the convenience store, and the manager behind the convenience store said to us, "You boys ain't from around here." I said, "No, sir, what gave us away?" He said, "There's only 2 colored people in town, and I know both of them."
Wow.
I said, "It's time to get back on base."
Wow.
But one thing that I grew up learning was to be comfortable confident in who I was as a black man.
Let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's go, let's go.
Good. So welcome to Black Dad Unfiltered. We are Black Dad Unfiltered. My name is Carlos V. Spencer. I'm here with my guy.
I'm your boy, Coach Rod. Once again, Black Dad is always trying to shape the narrative of fathers, in particular black fathers, creating a safe space where we can share real, authentic stories and just talk about what it means to be a black father today. Los, what we got on deck?
Man, that's an interesting thing. So we've been talking about what does it mean to be a man overall, right? But now we're going into a space of what does it mean to be a black man in America?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's, I don't want to even say a loaded question, but it's a real one.
Yeah.
It's a real one. We can speak to the same space of what does this mean to be a man overall, but I think especially with the panelists that we have here with us today, we can definitely speak specifically what it means to be a black man, because as you and I know, once you cross those thresholds and you go out into this world, they're going to see you as a black man regardless. So what does it mean to be a black man in America, to move through this world? So on this panelist, we have our Frank Collins here. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, share some things about themselves, but we have Frank Collins. We have Will Green, Darnell Haywood. We also have Pastor Keith Mobley, who's coming in as we speak as well. But I'm going to go down from my left and have you guys introduce yourselves and just share with the people in the room and our listening audience just anything you'd like to share with them about you.
Hey, everybody. Will Green. I own my own educational consulting company, Tremonti Solutions. I also work at University of Buffalo, Graduate School of Education, and I'm happy to be here. I think that's about it.
Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate it, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Darnell Haywood. Professionally, I am the Regional Community Responsibility Officer for Bank on Buffalo full-time, as well as I am also the president of the Buffalo Urban League Young Professionals, and excited to be here today.
My name is Frank Collins. I am a business owner. Specifically, I'm the owner of the Texas Roadhouse in Cheektowaga. That's that's really about it.
All right, fair enough.
We're going to find out some more. I got Pastor Mobley as well.
Amen. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Pastor Keith Mobley, pastor of the Mount Olive Baptist Church of Lackawanna, New York. Also the president of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Western New York. Wear many hats, but I'm certainly grateful to be here for this opportunity.
All right. So let's shape the conversation for today. We know some of the aspects of being a black man hasn't changed over the last 200 years. We get that. But we also realize, one, the very definition of a man is being challenged today, and some of the cultural, ethical, moral constructs are challenging how we show up today. And we just have to accept today is not yesterday. Things have changed. And so we really want to have a conversation where we dive a little deeper into, now how does that mean we show up? Dealing with struggles from over 100 years ago and ever-present new struggles today. So Los.
Yeah, I'll say this because I want to lead into this and somebody pick up right where you want. I want to lead into that, like what does it feel like to be in some of these spaces, to be the only one in the room? That's one of the books I actually want to write, and actually a TEDx talk I want to do, being the only one in the room. I was a New York State Trooper for 5 years. Mm-hmm. There was 197 people in my class. 6 of us were black. 3 of us were dark skinned. I don't say I had to separate anybody, but I say once they came in the room, they saw us 3 right off the back. I had the opportunity to lead that class. I worked in 4 different stations. Out of those 4 stations that I worked in, there was 1 other black trooper who actually transferred out, and I had 1 other trooper who was black, who was a sergeant. Besides that, it was just myself. I remember we did a detail for Vice President Biden at the time, and we did that details of about 120 troopers in the room, and I was the only black person there. What does it feel like in some of the spaces that we move in when some other people from some other cultures may not have that feeling and they may not even recognize it? I remember looking around the room like, I'm the only one in here, huh? What does it feel like to be like that? Is there pressure that you have on your shoulders? Is there a confidence? Is there a cockiness? What does it feel like being the only one in the room in some of these spaces?
I see we fighting for the mic.
I mean, well, I don't want to,
No, go ahead, start, Will.
Yeah, no doubt. I could speak to that. It's interesting because I guess, from kindergarten to 8th grade, I went to school 53, shout out to 5-3 High. I had black principals, Nan Woods, black teachers. There was 99% black students, right? Then I went to Hutch Tech, and now it goes from 99% black students to about 10 to 15%. And I started to deal with some of the things there. Then I went to a predominantly white college. So now the numbers dwindling even more, but all throughout that journey, I learned how to operate in spaces. I think I'm very thankful to have gone to school at 53, which was a community school in Cold Springs, where we had block parties and the school was a part of it. So I knew what it meant to be proud of my blackness. So I wasn't going into these spaces not knowing who I was and what I was capable of. So fast forward to now working in a predominantly white space, I come with confidence. Like I necessarily don't think about who's in the room. I don't think about what they look like. Because how we move in our community is we don't care what you look like, it's how you acting, right? So for me, it's never, I'm the only black person in here. I'm used to sometimes being the only black person. And I know on the code, I'm representing. I'm going to represent. You might not think that I'm going to speak eloquently. I'm going to lay that down. And I'm still going to do it with a little bit of flavor that I picked up from where I'm from to show you exactly what I bring. It becomes problematic when you see they not acknowledging how you speaking, they not acknowledging the intelligence and the skill that you bring to the position, but you see that fear of a big black dude in front of you. You can see how they respond to that. Like I literally had a colleague on a trip say to me, we just got there in the morning, red-eye flight, we going to University of Penn, we walk into the lobby, the colleague looks at me like, oh, you look intimidating. And I just kind of put my sunglasses on and kept on moving and said to her story of my life. So it doesn't necessarily impact me because I'm going to show up how I'm supposed to show up. It becomes frustrating when even now in 2025, you still have to deal with some of these stereotypical ways that people want to treat you, but it's not going to shake me.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that?
I'll say similar to Will, the same with me. This is, I always say it, but it's my 19th year in banking. And starting in banking at a very young age, I went to MOK 39 for grammar school. I went to Bennett for high school. A lot of people don't think I went to Bennett for some reason. I don't know why.
Just so you know, folks, we're in Buffalo, New York. So when you start looking some of these schools up, these are Buffalo-centric schools. I went to Brooklyn Technical High School in Brooklyn. By the way, one of the top 50 high schools in the country.
Anybody ask? You know what I'm saying? And then the first panel, he said, I'm from the city. Like, what city we talking about? I pick on him all the time. What city we talking about?
But sorry, Donna, sorry about that.
No problem, but if you, Bennett High School, one of the best schools in the city of Buffalo. There we go. But I went to Bennett High School as well as I went to college here. I went to UB and Bryan and Stratton for college. But just being, I'll say, in the workforce and in banking for so long, I've been able to sit in various tables to work for International Bank, HSBC at one point in time, and then fast forwarding to now, I've been at Bank on Buffalo / CNB Bank for 8 years. If you look up CNB Bank is in Central Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Central Pennsylvania is, look it up. Look it up. That's all I can say. And when I started, now 8 years ago, I remember my first day, and I got to the town, little farm town. I'm looking around in my head. The Get Out movie had just started, had just came out, and I'm like, I'm going to lock my hotel room. I'm nervous as heck. Let me go to Walmart, get some water, get back to the hotel room. I get to Walmart. I was scheduled to start Monday. Went to Walmart as a Sunday, and as I'm going through town through the store, there was a gentleman that said, "Oh, hey, Darnell, how you doing?" And I looked at him. I said, "You, how do you know me?" "Oh yeah, we know that you're starting at the bank." So in my head, I'm like, they got a picture of me somewhere saying we got this black man that's about to start at the bank. I said, let me hurry up and get back to the hotel. But then just fast forwarding there, I knew then, having that first conversation at not even my first day, that my presence is going to make a big impact within the company. For some reason, that's just what I had in my head. So for me, going into these spaces where I may have been the only black person, or specifically black male in the room, I take advantage of that. I come in with my skill. I come in, of course, being the Darnell. I don't change my personality. My personality, my skill, and everything has got me into different doors, meeting with different politicians, municipalities, and I just know just being my authentic self has helped me to get where I am now.
I would just add to hearing what brother was saying. My narrative is a little bit different. I was born and raised in Georgia, rural Georgia, deep South Georgia, where everything was still kind of segregated. We still at this 2025 still having segregated proms. The black children have their own prom, then the white children have their own prom, even in 2025. So we grew up being comfortable in our skin, but we knew what areas we had to stay in. Remember, a lot of our friends, white friends, we didn't hang out and do things of that nature because living near sundowner states or sundowner cities where in certain areas we were not allowed to matriculate in was difficult. So our parents prepared us. They, certainly gave us the talk, what to do and what not to do, and how to carry on ourselves. Fast forward, moving into New York, it was a little shock to us, to me particularly, because growing up down south and seeing how things were, and then seeing something different here. I often tell a couple of friends of mine that I really appreciate some of the white environments I were down south versus the ones I have experienced in some places here up north, because down south we knew who was who.
Right.
Go ahead. You're preaching.
Right.
You're preaching right now.
Up north, sometimes it's very covert, and there's some signals that are given that, certainly puts the antennas up. Joined the military, spent 8 years in the military, and I can never forget one particular time we were doing training in Utah, near Salt Lake City, and a couple of buddies' eyes, we had some passes, so we went to the city, went to the mall, and as we were coming back, we stopped at a convenience store, and I walked in the convenience store, and the manager behind the convenience store said to us, "You boys ain't from around here." I said, "No, sir, what gave us away?" He said, "There's only 2 colored people in town, and I know both of them."
Wow.
I said, "It's time to get back on base."
Wow.
But one thing that I grew up learning was to be comfortable confident in who I was as a black man, and certainly be conscious of the environments that you're going into. So I think even in 2025, we still have to be very conscious of the environments that we are find ourselves in, and be confident in who we are. I'm never afraid to shine my light that I am a black man. I love being who I am and what God created in me, and I'm not afraid, and I'm ashamed of that. But I'm also very conscious of the environments I'm in.
And that's interesting because I know, Mr. Collins, I'm going to give it right over to you. People think it happened a long time ago. People have a tendency to think like, oh, no, it's not that bad anymore. You said there are some high schools still to this day, and then your military experience was, we had 2 black people here, and I know both of them. I remember when I was a trooper, a guy looked at me, and I'm thinking, this is my first day on the road by myself. I'm up in Watertown, New York. And I'm like, what's wrong? Did I mess something up? Did I do something wrong? My uniform wrong? Because you got your Stetson on. He comes up and he shakes my hand and said, I've never seen a black trooper before in my life. I said, oh, okay. Shook his hand, he left off. Mr. Collins?
Yeah, I grew up in Georgia. I come from a long line of sharecroppers. My father sharecropper, his father, and so on and so forth. So I grew up in the Deep South as well. I always remember my father always telling me that, son, you have to give people something that they have to recognize about you. And I believe in what he was talking about at that time. It does not matter to me what color you are or who you are. Everybody recognizes performance. You can take away a lot of things, but you can't take away a person's performance. Because if you are the best at what you do, that has to be recognized, no matter how difficult it is. And growing up in the South, I grew up in a small town called Vienna, Georgia.
Yes, sir.
It's between Macon and I would say
Cordele.
probably Cordele.
Cordele.
Right, that's where I'm from. Little small town, all farming. And growing up on that farm, it was a lot of hard work. But the lessons that I learned are the same lessons that really, really carried me to this day. And sure, it's difficult to be the only one in a room, but I never entered the room, never feeling like I don't belong, because in my experience has always been, sometimes you talk to people, and those who you think are really sharp, sometimes they open their mouth and you're like, whoa, I can't believe that person just said that. So I think that it's really to our advantage to be what we are. I really do believe that. So
Can I say this? Because I want, Mr. Collins, I want you to allude a little bit on that. Because somebody, a listener, is watching or listening and saying, okay, no, it does matter. Performance doesn't matter. I'm black, so I may not be able to outperform somebody else, or if I perform to a great level, I'm still going to be held back. But I believe you work in a space of owning a restaurant on a certain level with Texas Roadhouse. I would like to believe, and you can speak more to it, that there aren't a lot of other owners that look like you. So your performance had to take some type of play in that.
no question about it. Actually, within the brand itself, there's not that many of us. So, it becomes imperative that, well, let me put it like this. Every day I go in, I open up my restaurant, I got a chip on my shoulder, because I know that there are people that are constantly watching me. Why they may not say anything is I understand, what's happening. So I go in every day and I get down. Whatever it is, whatever I need to do, I will always make it happen. In fact, when this is all said and done, I go and work another 8 hours. So, but that's just and I think that in order for us to be successful in the game of life, I think that we have to realize that you will be held at a different standard. We will not get the same opportunities as others. There's no question about it. So don't look for that. I know I don't. I do what I got to do. Pray and keep it moving. That's always been my formula. That's what my parents raised me.
One thing just to add to what you just said, sir, that made so much sense and came, even clear as you was talking, because that type of philosophy or teaching or thinking was instilled in our hearts as younger men, that we had to outperform. If someone's getting an A, you better get an A+. If someone's running a mile, you better run a mile and a half. It was put in us that we had to go the extra mile in order to almost get the same opportunity. So that mentality, is what I grew up learning, and how I lived my life is giving extra. It may require just this, for some people, but it requires you so much more.
Coach, I'm going to go right to you.
Yeah,
I just want to
go
touch
ahead.
on that point. Because this is information. We're going to be unfiltered, right? That's the thing we say. There's
I don't
no
own a
filter.
filter.
He said, we don't own a filter. Black Dad Unfiltered. So in my state police class, again, there was 6 blacks. I had a couple white roommates, and we had to speak against other people to get voted to be the class representative. To my knowledge, there's never been another black class representative since 1917, speaking of things that have never happened. And my white roommates told me they're not going to vote for you because they don't want you to lead this class. They told me that. He said, but if they don't vote for you, it's going to be obvious because you're better than everybody else.
Wow.
So to outperform, had to outperform to the point where if they didn't vote me to be president, it would have been obvious why they didn't vote me to be president. So I couldn't be even with them. I had to outperform them. And so they ended up voting for me. And you know I'm a little cocky a little bit, right? You had to go 7 times to be voted every time. I told them after my first speech, I said, I've already written all 7. So the rest of y'all preparing. I'm just getting ready for the last round.
So I'm gonna anchor us in just one simple question, right? Because I'm hearing the wisdom, and there's a lot of diversity here from backgrounds, even in age. And I'm going somewhere with this. At what age are you considered a man? There's a reason why I'm asking that. At what age are you considered a man? Because some of the jewels that you shared and that you shared, if someone's considered a man at 20 years old, they don't have that context of what it means to put in that work into yourself, grind. And so for them, the definition has shifted, right? I'm a product of immigrant parents. I grew up in my actual culture. So it's a whole different set of values that I see. My son is 19, getting ready to be 21. The things that I try to teach him, everything is fighting against it. So his definition of what a man is going to be may be different than the things that are resonating between all of us here. So I open it up. It's a tongue-in-cheek question, but what age? And feel free to run with that.
For me, I would say it started very young because one of the trigger words that we were certainly had in our growing up was being called a boy.
Can you put the mic a little closer? We want to make sure we hear you.
Being called a boy,
Yeah.
being called the boy, and our parents and even our community. I remember my dad shifting. I would say around age 13 and 14, started calling me young man instead of a boy, because that boy was a trigger word. And he was trying to instill something in us, my brother, and certainly friends that were around us, that we're more than just boys. We are young men, and then ultimately becoming men into the manhood. So with me, I kind of kept that kind of mentality even when raising my sons. Stopped calling them boys and calling them young men, and then once they graduated, and I call them men. You're men.
What's the graduation point, though?
At graduation point, for my son, it was a little different from me, because I was looking at his maturity. He was not, still going through some of the youthful things that young men do. But when he began to show some maturity and taking responsibility for some of the things that he was responsible for, I told him, "You're in manhood now. This is manhood." And we had that conversation about manhood, and I think it's more so of that maturity level. But I stopped using the word boy because it was a trigger word for us. It was a way to draw us down and keep us, subjective. And I wanted to move away from that trigger word, and young men, or once you become to that mature level, you're a man. And we did it that way for us.
Love to hear from anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, because the first thought was, well, you become a man when you start to do things that men do, but that can become confusing because they are becoming physically a male and then mentally a male. I think one of the things that we truly have suffered from is not having a true rites of passage that is easily understandable and relatable. It's one thing to move from childhood to young adulthood to manhood to even becoming an elder, because I don't think you stop, right? You continue to progress. Certainly there were things that I did as a young man that I thought were part of becoming a man, but now as I've gotten older and reflected, I'm like, nah, that was still some boy stuff.
Yes, sir.
I'm still trying to scrub it out of my system. I don't necessarily have an answer, but I'm a firm proponent on communal standards for rites of passage for men and women, so we can earn the moniker man and woman.
I'll say this. It's hard for me to say for myself, right? Lost my father when I was 19. So it's hard for me to say for myself. I remember 25, 28, like, I guess I'm a man now. I remember that.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, and there's still some days, I guess. But I will say, to your point, my son, when he was 18, we did a rites of passage for him. And when we did this process.
What's this rites of passage? Talk to us, because
So,
not everyone understands this.
Right. There's a process that you can do for, could be your son, could be your daughter, to show them that this is something that they can remember back in their life where I am actually an older man. I'm actually a grown man. I'm actually a grown woman. So there's some type of process. A quinceañera, maybe not be that they're an adult, but different things at that age. For my son, when he was 18, we actually had him an event at a banquet. And then we had something where we walked around the park and we had different men walk with him at different parts around that park. And they shared information into him and they gave him a brick. And so when they gave him the brick, another man added another brick at the next part. And that man walked with him while he had the 2 bricks. When he got to the end, I carried some of the bricks for him. And while we were taking it to the finish line, I told him, just because you're a man now doesn't mean I'm not there with you. And he just turned 22 Saturday. And I just told him this on the phone. Your father has fathered you as a boy, but now I'm going to father you as a man. So you're still a young man. You're still going to need my help, but you are an adult now, but I'm still going to father you. My fathering is going to be different now because you are a young man, but it doesn't mean you're by yourself. And I can guarantee you in his mind, he remembers the rites of passage. So for him, it will be a thing of, I remember when I became a man, when we did the rites of passage, and then we had the banquet. And then we had people speak into my life. Although I did tell him that doesn't mean that you have to do all the thing that a man does, but it does mean that you're not a boy anymore.
It's an indigenous practice. It's something that has happened throughout history where communities created ceremonies and practices for young people to transcend over into the next stage of living. Very important to our being. To know that, okay, I'm crossing over, and I think the Bible says it. We got some pastors up here. I became a man when I put away these childish things. That's right. Like, so, and when I say communal practices, there are individual rites of passages happening all over the city. But if you're not in the right group, you don't get the rites of passage. There needs to be a communal rites of passage in which we understand what it means to transfer over in from childhood to young adulthood to adulthood. And I love your point. You said you carried them bricks with him and you told him, so I fathered you as you were a child. Now I'm going to father you as a man. That's a rites of passage for you into elderhood. I see elders competing with young men for the same thing. You can't consider yourself an elder if you got competition with a kid.
So I'm a frame something for you, right? Because this is very personal. Everything we do on Black Dad is personal to me and Carlos. We're never going to provide answers to people. We're just going to keep asking questions that we want help with, okay? And there's a reality to this. One of the reasons why we started this, again, giving context, is what we saw in social media pitted black men against black women, man against women, our traditional roles, right? Again, 50, 60 years ago, one income earner was one thing, right? We as black people now are in this toxic social dynamic, right? And I believe, and I could be wrong, but feel free to challenge me, we cannot reestablish community until we reestablish the black man. But I'm also aware today is not yesterday. So what am I supposed to do today, right? Holistically, spiritually, visionary, entrepreneurship, financially, educationally. What am I today is what I want to drive home with this, right? And I open that up for anyone. I'm passionate about what we're talking about because we can't change the outcome if the man himself is not changed, adapted, equipped. I mean, I open that up.
For sure. I tested that, and I want somebody to go ahead and chime in. I think, Ms. Collins, I've often coined this phrase, and I believe it was God that said it to me. I firmly, that man is the center of the problem. Not mankind, not humans, man, he, him, all right, male. He's the center of the problem, but he's also the center of the solution. So I do think that once you get the man back together, I do think you will see everything else start to come back together.
You know, it's a great question. I think that you have to take it back to its roots. I think that, to be a man or however you want to equate it, it has to start at home. Life is what it is. We got social media here and all those other dynamics. But until we understand the fact that everything starts at home. You know, I employ a lot of people, and I wear a lot of different hats. And I can sit down with a kid immediately within 5 minutes, or sometime less than that, and tell a story in terms of, you know, what's happening at home. So I think that, you know, if we're looking to get back to the center, it has to start at home. I was very fortunate that I had both my parents. Very, very fortunate. That's not the standard of today, unfortunately. You know, there was a time in my life that I wasn't necessarily thrilled when I told people I'm from the South, but as I grew up more, I left home when I was about 17, 18, moved to Syracuse. That was wild for me. But, you know, as I sit and watch and continue to grow today, I am so happy that I grew up in the South because values are so far different. And that's not to take away anything from the North. It really isn't. But the values are far greater, or far different, I should say. But I definitely think that you have to start, you know, when we start talking about community, it has to start in the home. And if the home life is not quite perfect, or if a young man or a young woman doesn't have a set of standards or people to look to, then you're going to have a bunch of problems. And I'm gonna explain that. I don't have any children. I focused my entire life on just being a very successful businessman. That was my goal when I was about 15. I decided when I was about 15 exactly what I wanted, and I never stopped. So I have stepchildren though, and I helped the young lady raise her kids, and they look at me as being their dad. So you have to understand that, you know, the values that I put in them, you know, and now they come back and they tell me from time to time when I talk to them, I am so happy with all the things that you taught me. And, you know, and when you do things from your heart, you rarely think about what you're doing. You just act and you do the best you can. So I definitely think that it has to start at home. And if the home life isn't up to par, but then it becomes the community. And I think that, you know, it's up to us as men, black men, to somehow or another create this type of forum to help people out. Because, you know, I'm telling you, it's rough. It's rough in the black community. But yet, in my opinion, we are truly the best community. So I think that, you know, if we could start at home or create more events like this, I certainly think it helps out.
I would just add this, that, you know, we cannot elude or overlook the fact that there has been a systematic system that has been set up to eliminate the black male, especially in the black home. Black men have been forced out of the home, and we're guilty as that as well. I don't put all that on the onus, but we quit. We quit on the moral standards that we grew up on, because the system has forced their way into the home and made the black male the number one target. You see now single mothers trying to raise families by themselves. And this is not to say anything negative against our sisters, because women have done a tremendous job with what they were able to do, but God made men to be men for black men, meaning that we were given the equipment to how to raise other strong black men. And somewhere along the way, we quit because we felt like the job was too hard, or the system was against us, rigged, and we stopped being the fathers that we need to be in the black home. And our sisters were forced to raise these young men by themselves, and I don't think they were given all the necessary tools to give them how to be a strong black man. So there's a systematic issue that we cannot elude out of the conversation, because that system is still in place and it's more prevalent even now. I think that if we're going to get to the problem, we've got to deal with two things. We've got to deal with what is present is the system, and then we also have to deal with the black man and equipped us to get back and to be the fathers that we're called to be.
So I know the other two want to jump in, but something you said that I really want to emphasize because I'm going to bring it back. I love what you did. There's an ownership that we have to take. We quit, right? That quitting is a decision. And you've all alluded, there are challenges. There are obstacles. We cannot afford to quit, right? And I'm going to take it a little further, come back to it. And if we quit, the very image of a black man will soon evaporate. And we won't know what a good black man actually looks like anymore. But I'll chime it to you.
I'll say that too. Now, I want to definitely hear from the gentleman. And these are conversations I have with black men. That the world has a misconception of toxic masculinity, where sometimes it's just masculinity. But the world has not, it's in such a place that it's not used to seeing masculinity, that when masculinity shows up, it seems toxic. Now, I'm not saying it's not toxic out there, but I'm saying we ought to challenge ourselves sometimes when we're so quick to say a man is being toxic next to saying a man is actually being a man. And not just when that man benefits you, not just when he's protecting you. So, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but ain't no filter, right? If I can't tell you, no, you got to stand with me.
I may abandon you after
You got to stand with me. You got to stand with me, 10 toes down. If I can't tell you what to do, how can I protect you? And if I hit you, I ain't trying to miss you. I'm not saying tell you what to do in a doormat type of place. But if I can't give you direction, then how can I actually protect you? Okay. Because you may step outside of that protection and say, I'm not protecting you. And I'm saying, well, you won't even let me instruct you.
So my sister told me before we started, let the panelists talk, Ron. I said, all right, you're right. And my sister, again, shout out. She's about to be a doctor on May 15th, all right? My doctor sister. I'm going to tap into the spiritual, right? We talking about the image, and we're made in the image of God, right? That's the very foundation. So taking that, what is the image of man? If you cannot recognize the image of God in someone, you do not accept their authority or their ability to lead your life. That's a fact. If I cannot see God in you, you cannot lead me. So going back, before we talk about you got to let me lead you, whoever, son, daughter, brother, sister, has to see the image of a man inside of you. So I'm going to come back. What does a black man look like, or should look like today, so our sons can know what to strive to through their rites of passage, and that our community knows how to identify and say, there you go. That's the armor bearer. Because very similar to the Bible, we do not know what God looks like, but we know what he looks like through his actions, his good deeds, and his sacrifice. You're going to get me started, because I used to get behind the pulpit a little bit too, okay? So y'all not alone up here. Go ahead.
So I'm glad you said that, because I don't know a lot about the Bible. I was like, nobody's seen the face of God. But we know what his presence feels like, right? Presence is a mean thing. And there's so many things that you gentlemen have shared about standards, about what it means to hold yourself accountable. But the first thing I want to say specifically about black men, black women, John Henrik Clarke, famous African-American historian, God rest his soul, Grand Master teacher, said, there can be no war between black men and black women. It's all of us or none of us. That's the first thing. It's all of us or none of us. There's no war between black men and black women. People gonna do what they do, right? People gonna do what they do. My Facebook got cleaned up by the algorithm, okay? I'm not clicking on silliness. If you promote silliness, you're off my list. It's nothing but knowledge coming through there. So what you open yourself up to is important. But what I'll say is this, like, you don't know what it looks like until you experience it fully. And really, we still here as black people because of our adaptability. What you needed to be as a man 1,000 years ago may not necessarily define what manhood is today. But I can tell you this, when you strong, when you need to be strong, can you be strong? When you need to listen, can you listen? When you need to step aside and let others lead, can you do that? And can you do it with confidence? Can you make room when room needs to be made? Those are the qualities of not just manhood, but really a evolutionized human, right?
Yeah.
And where you at in the space. And people gonna pick up on that energy. But I'll tell you this, there's no woman who does not want to feel protected. Can you protect without using physical strength? Are you adaptable to the situation? Can you pay attention enough to know what's needed in the moment? And can you make room to do it with a queen? Like,
Absolutely. Here's what the Bible says in regards to the relationship between a male and female, or husband and wife. It says in Ephesians 6, it says, wives, submit to your own husband as unto the Lord. And then it says, husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church. I often share in marital counseling and those sessions with the relationships is that the only way that a woman will submit to your leadership as the husband is that she's got to feel like you're willing to lay down your life for her.
Talk about it.
When he says submit, that word submission, in my estimate, in my own understanding, is not that you're voiceless. It means that if he's sacrificing, if he's protecting, he's my covering, he's doing everything he's supposed to do as my husband, I have no qualm about following his leadership. He's the head of the household, but we working this thing together. And then if my wife is doing all the things that my wife is supposed to do, then I'm going to do everything I can to cover the family. I'm going to work extra hours. I'm going to do all I can to make sure that my wife is covered. And if we're in harmony together in the home, then it spills over into our children and our relationships, and our sons see how I treat my wife and see how she treats me, and it causes them to want to have that same type of relationship. And I think somewhere we miss that, where women, our wives, are no longer submitting because our husbands don't feel like the husband ain't protecting them. I'm doing this all by myself. And because I'm all by myself, I'm going to do it all by myself. And every time you raise your voice to say something, I got a problem with it because I feel like I'm doing it all by myself. But if we're a team and we're together in harmony, listen, our household flourish and our environment, everything around us flourish. That's a relationship I saw, and I also kind of say what my brother said here, is that I was blessed to have two loving parents in the house. A mother and a father that worked, a mother who worked and then made sure every night we had a hot meal on the table. And she had no qualm about that. She had no problem putting the food on the table and doing those things and making sure the house was taken care of, because she knew my father was doing everything he could to make sure there was food on the table, food in the refrigerator to cook. So I think we somehow came into competition. And going back to your statement is that we can't be in competition in the same household. A house divided against itself cannot stand. That's my thought.
So going back to, go ahead.
I want to get Darnell in here, man.
Yeah,
Darnell's
I want to get Darnell in, but I want to say this. So there was a study, I think it was about 2014, where they interviewed fathers and talked about the things that they did with their kids, and they pretty much dispelled the notion that black men are not involved with the lives of their children.
That's a myth.
Black men do more of the things that matter than any other race in America. Reading to their children, walking to school with their children, taking their kids to the park. They said black men do those activities more than any other race. I think we start to get in trouble when we try to hold ourselves up, or we hold black men up to standards that were created in a society that was designed to keep us from having access to resources. But when you look at the things that don't cost money, black men do them more than any other race of father.
And I'll just say this, going back to the point, because you said, what does a man look like?
What does a man look like today?
What does he look like
What
today?
does a black man look like today in America?
And my brother can attest to this. My grandfather's tombstone says he walked with kings and kept a common touch.
You promised you wouldn't do this to me, Los. If you watch the show, Los always comes with these quotes. Give me a half hour. I'm going to come up with something.
I got you. He walked with kings and kept a common touch. And I say that for what does a man look like? You got to have that balance of, you got to be a strength to be a king, but you have to still be, in this day, like we said earlier, relatable. You can't be such a father where you're so high, so detached, so emotionally unattached, where you're not being able to be relatable to your children, to your spouse, to your friends. So you got to balance those two things. I'll talk about the balance that T.J. Jake stated, but I don't want to go too far here from our guests. But that's another balance that's almost impossible to balance. But I'll step back into that. But you got to walk with kings and keep the common touch.
Ephesians, give it to me again.
Ephesians chapter number 6.
Say it again for me, because I'm going to expand on it.
Ephesians chapter 6 says, wives, submit to your own husband as unto the Lord. And it says, husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church.
As Christ loved the church. So now because again, we're going to expand on that, and then we're going to bring in some of the economics in this. The function of the man is to be Christ, right? And if you go into Luke, when we expand on what Christ wanted, he wanted servants. So in essence, you're submitting to a servant in the household. The role of the husband is to serve that household, provide, protect, but also take care of emotionally, especially emotionally, right? See where there's pain and intercede, right? And I think as men, as black men, we're losing some of that servitude, right? Which is also creating some of the decay of our ethics and our morals and our expectations, right? Right? Because when you serve, you recognize when you're being served. When you serve, you appreciate service. Is this making sense? Absolutely. And ultimately, that scripture is talking about creating this cyclical dynamic, right? I'm going to do what Christ, I'm a sacrifice. I'll take whatever burdens there are. I will forgive because I know you don't know what you're doing. And vice versa, you're doing the same thing to me. I'm going to submit on to this. But let's fast forward, right? Because a lot of things you're saying, you talked about the entrepreneurship and you're determined to be successful, these rites of passage, this community. You started using words kings and queens, and we start talking about the opportunities, right? I want to get into some of the responsibilities of a man is to provide. And in this day and age, providing is no longer just putting food on the table. It's legacy creation, right? Los always talks about this. He wants to leave something where his great-grandchildren don't have to worry about going to school. So I just want to hear it from you candidly. What are you seeing in the bank? What are you seeing as men try to buy homes? Like, what's stopping them from being able to fulfill part of this gap? What do you see the gap is in this?
When you think of, I'll say, you hear the term generational wealth a lot when it comes to, I'll say specifically, low to moderate income families, aka, let's just be truthful, when it comes to black households and other minorities. And a lot of it comes from, for me, when I do my research, is I call it the generational curse, where our grandparents, our great-grandparents didn't emphasize to us the importance of financing. And a lot of times, I'll say, when you pull up credit reports, when you think of banking and ask, like, where are you banking? The number one answer that I hear all the time is Cash App. Cash App.
Cash App?
Cash App.
Okay.
Cash App USA.
That's the number one bank now, right?
That's the new bank, Cash App. Between Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, or the money is in the basement. And that's not helping you. I said in the camera, that's not helping you. Building credit, you think of credit. A lot of times, even now, I know I'm excited to have the opportunity to create products and services to help individuals that may not be bankable, that may need to purchase a home. But even in the past, those opportunities weren't available. And the one thing that I'll say for even us as black men is we don't do the research to see what things are available for us, specifically even black men business owners. We don't look to see what, I'll say, even right now, there's over $10 million of grant money that's available within the city of Buffalo, that all you have to do is ask. And
I'm going to ask you after the show. Let's have a conversation, Darnell.
We're not sure for asking. What you want? You want $1 million?
I mean, but even with that, when you ask, there's a lot of qualifications that you haven't filed taxes in the last 2 years. You haven't filed taxes ever, so you wouldn't qualify for certain things like that. But we don't ask. We never ask the right questions. Why? Because we're too prideful. And our pride gets in the way of creating that generational wealth, or also making us, we can all be millionaires, but our pride gets in the way with us not wanting to ask the right questions.
Can I just ask you this question, because that's huge what you just said in regards to what's available out there and just asking. Would you also say that it's also a piece of that is that we don't know who to ask? Sometimes we go into some doors and sometimes we don't leave the door open enough for others to come in, meaning that some of us have arrived as a community, but we don't look back and pull somebody with us. So my question to that was, do we often know who to ask? Because that's huge. Some people, this is probably the first time somebody, that's $10 million, I get that, but who do I ask? Yeah, 8 million. But in your experience, I mean, and I don't mean, in your experience, is that something that you also add to that?
Yeah, I'll definitely agree. I don't think we know who to ask, but I think for myself, and maybe because I won't say I'm a little younger. I am a little younger, but doing the research.
Yes, sir.
All you have to do is the research to see what's available. I also sit on a board, List New York. I've been on List New York's board for the last 3 years. Within that program, we've developed various initiatives specifically for developers of color throughout the state of New York, even locally here, for different, I'll say, religious organizations, specifically Black and brown religious organizations, affordable housing. We've given money to them. Even recently, $3 million along the Jefferson corridor. So just things like that. You can research stuff like that, but it's free to research. But sometimes we don't research. We don't ask the right questions. And to myself, I always ask why don't we ask these questions?
So where are they searching for that? Is there a link or something? Because I understand we're not searching, but people like yourself has the information, giving it to people.
Yes.
Where would somebody start to search for some of the information, not maybe all of it?
Depending on what type of business owner you are, you can look on state websites, city websites, looking up different organizations to fit your niche business or your niche situation. Those are all available online.
I want to ask you a question, and this is taking you outside of this, but I think my brother Will and I, we're kindred spirits. How hard would it be for us to just start our own Black community bank? Like finance ourselves, because we're on the vein of we gotta take care of ourselves. At some point, we gotta build this for ourselves because we understand ourselves, right? And you may not have the answer, but give me an idea of what you think, right? I know you represent one institution, but everyone keeps talking about Black Wall Street. How do we bring this back?
Being very transparent, I actually am doing the research to do it myself right now, but it's not as hard as we think it is. Getting the right investors involved, of course, working with FDIC and looking to see what you need to do to get that specific bank chartered.
Okay.
It's not that hard. I do partner up with a guy in New York City in Harlem. The bank is called Carver Bank.
I know Carver.
And I always pull on him if I need any information to see, hey, I'm still looking to see how I can start that bank up in Buffalo. But it's not as hard as we think.
Okay. I'm sorry, fella. I don't want to turn this into a banking situation, but I do think part of being a man today, especially a Black man, is you have to be able to know how to access certain things. So I know we're getting closer to wanting to have our panelists ask questions, but I want to just share a story. Especially I like to share stories so our audience hears it. I have a young Black son. And what was weird was my son was raised Caribbean, Christian, but in urban Brooklyn, New York. So you have 3 different cultures at play here. No excuses, but just giving context. And he never felt he fit in. Then he transfers to a predominantly private school, different community, different demographic. And as I look at my son, I see the struggle for identity. Right? Who am I? Right? These people have, lighter, fairer complexion, green eyes, different hair, dress differently, listen to different things. And this is why I started this. What does it look like today? Because I'm still trying to make you look like me and your grandfather. Because my grandfather's from a farmer background, rice in Haiti, right? I don't know what's acceptable for you today, but I just have to know that this is going to be different than what my father was, right? And so if we can just give like one or two things on that, right? Because I think we've already established from this conversation, there is no one look. We can't necessarily say what a man is supposed to be, but we do know some of the elements that have to be there to show up. We do know that it's essential. But I share that, that with you. So if you just want to chime in and starting from here, going there.
I think that to me, I'm an old school guy. That's
I
just
couldn't
me.
tell, brother. I couldn't tell.
I'm very old school. I think that I'm big on discipline. I believe in that. I just think that you have to, when I was helping an ex raise her children, I did all I could to establish discipline in their lives, because I know that, this may not fit what you're saying, but I know that talent is not enough. It only gets you through the front door. Without discipline, you're nobody. So I like discipline. That's the way I am. I'm an old school cat. I'm a very old school dude. So that's the best answer I can come up with right now.
Just your thoughts, right? We won't have a short answer, but it's dialogue, safe space.
When I think of when I'll say I do mentor with the Urban League as well, but then my age group of 21 through 40-year-olds, and each male that we have within there have various different characteristics, very different types of how they mentor the youth, and I'll say the young men with the Urban League. And the one thing that I do want to say too is just working within the schools, and I'm sure Will can attest to that too. I think making sure that we have one thing that we're missing within our, and I'll say specifically public schools, are great male role models, specifically black male role models. A few weeks ago, I did a junior achievement class, and it was on entrepreneurship and business, and we got on the topic of I think career building, and I gotta probably get used to it now, because I hate when people say Mr. Haywood. It makes me think of my dad. I'm not my dad. He older than me, but it makes me think of we talked about like, what do you want to be, and if I heard I want to be like Little Baby one more time within my class, I was just going to throw something, because I feel that we don't have a great representation of leadership of black men within the school system. I mean, for me, my role models, of course, my father is number one, but I also grew up in the church as well. So looking at pastors and how they conducted themselves, my father, how he conducted himself, my uncles, how they conduct themselves. I think just seeing strong males, I can't go deeper and deeper because all of them had different characteristics that they instilled in me. So, I mean, that's my point of view.
I think one key characteristic has to be, for black men, has to be you have to be serious about your education. And for me, education is not just what you learn in school. I think you learn skills in school. And for black men, it's mostly an indoctrination into how to survive white society. That doesn't teach you how to thrive, right? You can pick up skills. But we talk about examples and role models. How are we even here today having this conversation post-Middle Passage, post-slavery, post-civil rights movement, post the war that was brought down on the communities that we came from in the 80s, 90s, and beyond? It's some really powerful individuals who have stories that can tell you what you need to know for the next wave of the fight. We have to be serious about education. We have to make sure that folks understand what a well-rounded education is. We have to have folks who understand that there's different forms of genius, and it shows up in different ways, specifically for people who look like us. And then we have to make sure that our conversations include elements of education and how we apply education to our daily living to improve our conditions.
Wow. For me, that kind of ties into also what I think. I work in a public school in Lackawanna, city of Lackawanna, a charter school there. I'm the only black male teacher in the particular school that I sub in. The reason I took the job is...
Is that predominantly black students?
It's a mixed culture,
Okay.
mixed cultural.
Global concepts.
Yes, sir. The superintendent, a great guy, great friend. They were really reaching out, trying to find teachers to come in. And I committed, said I'll go in. And one of the reasons I did commit was a lot of the kids that are going to that school are members of my church. Their families are a part of our community. And by seeing my presence there and being there, I'm able to affect their lives. Some of them were struggling when I got there with behavior issues and those things of that nature. Being able to pull them to the side and have that one-on-one dialogue or just showing my presence in the classroom seems to calm the relationship between the teacher and the student a little bit, and they'll go on and do what they need to do. So it was, for me, a place that I can, certainly begin to instill that importance of that education and importance of why you need to get all that you can, because the world is not as easy you think it's going to be. Everybody ain't gonna make it to the NFL. Everybody ain't gonna make it to the NBA. Everybody ain't gonna get that record deal. But you got to work hard for what is available in front of you. The second thing I think also is that somewhere down the line we dropped the torch as the community, the black community. We had those leaders that were out front and very vocal, and we pushed together, and we survived as a community because there was unity in our community. And we don't find that focal fight that we need to stand behind. I think, with this current administration, and once again, there's no filter, day one to strike down a right, a sign off on executive order to cancel affirmative action, to cancel DEI programs across the nation. I think it was a shot at black and brown community, because I'm not asking you to give me a handout, but I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to fight for the same job some of the other communities don't have to fight for. And affirmative action was a place that, we can stake our stake in the ground and say, listen, at least you've got to hear my voice or accept my resume, give me the opportunity to get to these colleges, DEI program. At least you don't overlook me because of the way I look. If I'm qualified for the job, give me the job. So I think we have fallen asleep at the wheel, and if we don't wake up, things are going to get worse, even before they even begin to look better. We are in a fight. I heard my brother say we're in a war, and the plan of this war has shifted, and many of us are asleep at the wheel. So I think it's important that we wake up the black man. Wake up who we are as black men, and we take our position back in our homes, in our communities. Amen. We begin to grab our young men and show them examples. One thing I admire most about those great black men that were in my life, that were very influential in my life, was that I liked how they carried themselves. They had a certain dignity about them. My cool Uncle Johnny, I can remember he came with a pocket full of change. I always suited and booted, had on his necklace.
The accent coming out now, suited and booted, huh?
Yeah.
We had the pastor before.
Absolutely,
now
man.
we got Keith.
Absolutely. But it was a way that he carried himself that, listen, he was an example I can look to. I dare to say that some of the examples that are in front of our black men is more damaging than helpful. And unless we as real black men stand up, I think we're going to get further and further behind the scale.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're going to Q&A. I think we've heard from our guests at this point. If we had anybody who has questions, feel free to come up and ask the question. always said, those who are in the room and those who are watching and listening, you may be asking a question that they be thinking of, so never feel shy about that question you may want to add. If not, we'll continue to have dialogue and close it out, but we want to make room, anybody to come up to the actual microphone stand and ask your question just so we can hear you.
Greetings, brothers. I would say this before I leave because I had to head back, but this was beautiful. And the question I have is, being, or I should say, a black man in America, and you're asked the question, what does that look like? And right now, for what I can see and observe for, pain. I see a lot of black men in pain. Because for years they lived in destitute oppression, forced to be something that they're not, and always have the standard to hold something that doesn't belong to them. So my question is, how can we, as black men, help other black men recognize their worth?
I think that I think these type of segments are vital to the community. I really do. I think that that's what needs to happen. Sometimes we're too caught up or too segregated amongst ourselves to help each other out. You know, I have a team of people that I deal with all the time, other brothers, not just from Buffalo, but from a lot of different cities. And I think that's what needs to happen. That's why I really believe that community, it has to start with community. You know, we have to create a base of community where brothers and sisters feel comfortable enough to come and share. And if we can do that, that's where healing starts. I really, really, truly believe that. And I think that's really what's really missing. You know, I mean, there's no question about it. Yeah, we're going to be faced with that. And nowhere in the Bible does it say that that the roads will be easy. I mean, guys, I'm faced with problems every day. I mean, that restaurant I run is a busy bad boy. And let me tell you, there are issues beyond issues. I get phone calls, text messages at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, but I wear the mask. You know, and I try to wear as best I can. And what really helps me out is that I know that I got a brother down in Baltimore that I can reach out to and share my frustration. And sometimes he has a piece of knowledge that he can give me to help me solve a problem. So I think one of the brothers said at some point, we can't be too prideful. Your pride will kill you. It'll see you right to hell. So I think that we have to put aside the pride and just learn to love and help each other as best we can. Yeah. I really believe that.
In that pain piece that you mentioned, sir, that is so true. It's so real that as black men, there's a lot of pain out there. One thing I learned in the military was that that basic training I was in, the first, I'd say 4 weeks or so was, whew, oh man, it was painful. It was hard. But what we learned in the midst of what we were going through was we had battle buddies. We had someone we can rely on. We supported one another. Even to this day, I still have friends that went through basic training and through the AIT and all my training with that we still connected. But I think as a black men, we've got to learn how to support one another. I shouldn't be afraid of my brother when I see him walk down the street. That's my brother. We may come from different homes and all that, but I look in your eyes, you're still the same black man to me, that you are my brother. And I should be able to support you, lift you up, and get over the pride stuff. I mean, I think jealousy plays a big part. It has crept its head in where we're like crabs in the barrel sometimes. We see one person get up and, oh, he got the big head, he boos you now. We trying to pull him down. But if you grow, I'm growing with you. If you go up, I'm going up with you. And if you need to get to the window, I'm going to hold you up because we got to get there together. But I think if we can support one another, I think that's how we begin to overcome some of the stuff that's in front of us.
That's right. So I have one more thing before I go, is you guys brothers mentioned DEI and affirmative action, things of these things that took place in their eras and times that stood for men who had rightful pride and strive, right? Who was proactive as well as reactive. And in today's society, it did nothing for us besides cripple the privilege of actually doing what is necessary. It was more, DEI itself was more prevalent to white women than men. And it was overly privileged to the degree that it was no longer based on your skill set. You know, my nephew or my friend or things of that nature will take advantage of such things because, you know, my pain is no different than your pain, but still is better than you. So my question to that is, what can we do now to avoid and to overcome such privilege that it cripples the critical thinking and development of the black man?
I can jump on that. So it's funny. I've said a few times on podcasts, like I'm anti-DEI, because that creates a label for somebody to attack. When you say DEI, you create a target, and now people know how to attack it. They just say, oh, I'm attacking DEI. They have no clue what it is, right? DEI is an offshoot of critical race theory, which was created by, in part, Derek Bell, sisters like Bell Hooks, right? Yes. And it's the concept that race critically impacts society in ways in which it keeps people who are black and brown oppressed. DEI is an offshoot of that. DEI is not about getting people jobs. Actually, DEI was a gift by oppressed people to people who oppress others to show and break down what it means to treat everyone like humans. So when you reject DEI, what you are rejecting is what people who have been oppressed gave you to teach you humanity.
Thank you, brother.
Period.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you.
But for us, you know, we've never gotten anything that made us collectively too big for our britches, as my grandmother used to say. We will always give more to others than we got from others. We create communal spaces. There is nothing that this country could give us collectively as a community that we all will turn our backs on each other. Individuals might take some of those shiny things and do something wrong with them, but guess what? That ain't on us. I think your original question was, how can we support each other? Ask yourself this honestly. When the last time you walked down the street or any space and saw somebody you did not know and say, hey, what's up, brother? How you doing? We had a wonderful conversation at the table.
Yes, we did.
And I just sat down and we just started kicking it. And I wasn't trying to take up space. I wanted to hear what you brothers had to say. We got to get back to this whole thing where we looking out for each other.
Agreed.
Where we not competing.
Yep.
I understand. I call it the threat analysis when I go places. And I'm looking, no, not a threat, not a threat. Oh, maybe that might be an issue. We got to drop that. Instead of the threat analysis, we need to look at ally analysis. How can I connect with these individuals? How can I connect with these brothers in the moment so we can face the challenges that present themselves right now? Because I don't care what nobody got, what they driving. You can't tell me that as a black man, you're not struggling with the things that are happening right now. How are we connecting to build community and fellowship with one another to face these challenges? That's something as simple as, brother, how you doing today? You good? Even if you don't know him.
I agree with what Will said too. I
think my brother's trying to sit down. You good?
No,
I'm
you're good. I'm listening. Go ahead.
But I know for me, I have a group of individuals, actually specifically within my field. It's crazy just crazy to think now within the banking field that it's recorded. It's for the 4 financial institutions locally here that it's for black males in community development spaces that sit and create change, that sit at the table, that actually control the table to make these changes, as well as in those DEI spaces. I'll use the term DEI just because I do sit on a group to make those decisions for DEI. And the one thing when it comes to DEI, for me that I was a little stressed at is because with my organization, DEI, they just do it as black, white, sexual orientation. DEI goes on disability. DEI is veterans. DEI is children. DEI, there's a whole list of DEI. But the one thing that I will say is that for me, is I create a sense of community that we always check in on each other to make sure things are well. We also always congratulate each other on our wins. If we have losses, we talk about it and how we can overcome that.
Thank you, brothers. And I'm going to check you because I want that price piece at 10 million. Just let you know.
8 million. 8 million.
It's going down. What's the math there? It's going down.
So, again, as we winding down, 'cause
Yes.
we want to respect the time of our guests,
Yep.
and the purpose of this is there is no conclusion, there is no end.
Continue
right?
conversation.
It's a continued conversation,
Yeah.
and the question is a trap. We can't get a final answer, but what
Right.
we're doing is showing how black men that different ages, different occupations, different looks can sit down, break bread as, my father used to say, I told you, give me half an hour, I'm going to come with something, Los. And just figure out how we're going to build this together.
Right.
Not for our individual success, but for our community. So what does a black man look like today? Someone who's sitting down with another black man thinking about how he's going to elevate the next community.
Exactly.
Los, take us home.
Listen, man, it's been a great time. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for been listening, watching. Follow us on Black Dad Unfiltered. QR codes on the screen for those who are in the room. You can follow us on all social media. This is a continued conversation. We polled different people to see what conversations that they want to hear black men talk about, not just the stuff we want to talk about. And those are some of the topics that we discuss. You can also send some information and topics that you might want to hear about and talk about as well. We are Black Dad Unfiltered. I'm Carlos V. Spencer.
It's your boy, Coach Rod. Let's go. Let's grow.
Let's
get it.
Y'all be blessed. Have a good one. Thank y'all so much.
Let's go, let's grow, let's grow.